Hello and welcome to Record Sports Hotline Live with myself, Daniel Caw, and my fellow colleague, Gavin Berry. Gav, how are you?
Good, Daniel, thank you.
It's a Champions League special today, Gav, because we've gone live just moments after Celtic learned their Champions League fate. And to be fair, if it hadn't been drawn by Brendan Rodgers himself, it feels like Brendan Rodgers conducted the draw. Very favourable for Celtic.
Yeah, I'm just glad, Dan, that it's finished before we come on air. I thought it was never going to get completed there. But I think you're right. It was this new format. It seemed to take forever. It was a wee bit confusing at the start. This randomised computer rather than the kind of traditional balls out the hat, which I think it actually lost a wee bit of its excitement just with that new format. However, you're right. I think I don't know if Brendan Rodgers was behind that computer, because I don't think you could have handpicked a better draw. I know you don't want to get carried away, but I think that's as good as they could have hoped for. Let's just recap it. Leipzig at home, Dortmund away, Club Brugge at home, Atalanta away, Young Boys of Bern at home, Dinamo Zagreb away, Slovan Bratislava home, and a Battle of Britain, Aston Villa away. So I think the great thing about it, Dan, is, well, as we say, first and foremost, it's favourable. I think particularly home tie, if you look at Club Brugge and Bratislava, it's got a good chance. There's a Battle of Britain in there. So it's got a bit of everything. Most importantly for Celtic, it gives them a real chance of progression, I think.
Aye, absolutely. Thomas Burns live on YouTube is written in saying it was handpicked. Villa, really. Aston Villa, Gav, is the one that I can't wait for. Honestly, John McGinn, I imagine, will be sitting at home as well, absolutely buzzing.
Well, that's it. Celtic fan was so close to going to Celtic, of course. Brendan Rodgers was in charge first time around. Unai Emery, Celtic won, was it their first away Champions League group stage game against Spartak Moscow?
You're right.
Certainly he was in charge then, whether that was the first. I think they've only won 2 away games in Champions League group stage.
That was the first one, definitely.
That was definitely the first. You're going to tell me who the second was? I should have known this, but I don't. Anderlecht away, of course. Oh, God, I was there. I was working for the paper that night. I was working for the Daily Record. So, yes, that's the 2. Unai Emery, so maybe that's a good omen. Of course, a good journey as well for the Celtic fans, down to the Midlands. And that's the other thing. I think what you want from the Champions League draw for fans, of course, they want a chance to progress. They get that. I also think you want a bit of freshness. Celtic, certainly in recent years, and even Rangers going back to, over the years, they've been lucky to go to some iconic stadiums, the San Siro, the Nou Camp. They've been there on a few occasions, both Rangers and Celtic fans. The Real Madrid was the one that was missing for so long. Callum McGregor, I think, said that was top of his list a couple of years ago. They then managed to tick that box. I think to get they want new destinations there. Club Brugge, I don't think Celtic have played before. They've been to Bratislava, of course, infamously Media Bratislava. So this is still playing a new team, not a new city. Zagreb, I think they played under Ronnie Deila in the Europa League. But Atalanta, Europa League champions, going to a lovely city like Bergamo. And then Dortmund, since we're going all retro this week with Oasis getting the band back together, there's a bit of nostalgia in there, because Young Boys of Bern and Borussia Dortmund, who Celtic, of course, fans have close links with, played them both in the early 1990s. So it's a chance to go back there. They've not been there for many years.
We started by saying it was a dream draw for Celtic, really, and I still would maintain that it is. But if you look at those 8 teams again, as you said, Atalanta are the current Europa League holders.
Yeah.
We know Villa, no mugs. Young Boys just knocked out Galatasaray in the qualifying, and RB Leipzig we know as well. A powerhouse from the Bundesliga. So,
well, of course, Celtic played them a couple of years ago, didn't they? Lost home under Ange Postecoglou.
And they also played them, I think I'm right in saying, in the Europa League.
That's
Was
right.
that Red Bull Salzburg? I can't remember.
No, I think you're right.
Aye.
You're right.
So the 8 teams, once again, if you're just joining us, Celtic have been drawn against in the new look Champions League is Young Boys of Bern, RB Leipzig, Aston Villa, Atalanta, Dinamo Zagreb, Club Brugge, Borussia Dortmund, and Slovan Bratislava.
And of course, Daniel, we know who they will play and where. What we don't know yet is when. I think UEFA will announce on Saturday the dates of the games and the kind of lineup. So I think that will be key. If you look back to last season, Celtic opened their account away to Feyenoord. Am I right in saying that?
Yep.
Lost 2-0. Tricky start. You're behind the 8 ball. They'll be hoping. I mean, if Celtic could start, Slovan Bratislava at home would be the dream start on paper. If not, then Club Brugge. Again, they want a winnable game. Start with a winnable game. Get a bit of confidence because obviously Celtic's away record in the Champions League isn't very good. So you don't want to go away to one of these teams you're losing and you're on the back foot. So it'll be interesting to see on Saturday what the kind of fixture list throws up.
And I know, Gav, you've got it in front of you though, but just to run through it again. So it's Dortmund away, Aston Villa away,
yes.
And it's Club
Atalanta away, Dinamo Zagreb away, and it's Leipzig, Brugge, Young Boys, and Bratislava at home.
See, to be honest,
if you take away the Leipzig at home, Celtic would really fancy their chances to win all 3 of those home games.
No, I agree.
We've got them in the final here.
Now, we put out on Record Sports X feed earlier on about how Celtic are 250 to 1 to win it. I think those have been slashed, Gav, those odds.
Yeah, but I actually thought those odds I thought they were pretty skinny, I must admit. I thought there would have been more than that.
Aye, I know, me too. But no, like you said there, the 3 home games, I'd even go a bit further and say, look, Celtic really will be eyeing winning all 4.
Yeah.
I know Leipzig are a very good team, but Celtic Park.
Yeah.
And then the Villa game will be absolutely brilliant, as well. Dortmund away. That's going to be a dream trip for a lot of Celtic fans. I think they'll absolutely love that. Obviously, we don't know much about Dinamo Zagreb or Bratislava, but
Zagreb, they defeated Karabag 5-0 on aggregate in their playoff round. So I love the way you said no mugs there. It's a great cliche, isn't it? No mugs. It's always there's never no easy games in Europe. No mugs.
That's it. We should say we're getting plenty of comments in. People watching at home, we appreciate it. Christopher McMullen, who's watching live on Facebook, simply says 12 points at home.
Okay, so he agrees with you.
I've got to say, Christopher, you're watching. I do agree. I think there's absolutely no reason why Celtic can't beat Leipzig at home, and obviously we're not. I'm taking the other 3 as a given, which sounds a bit mad, but we've said it again, Gav. You couldn't have picked a better draw for Celtic.
No, definitely not. So just looking at Leipzig, so 1 game into the Bundesliga, Leipzig 1-0, won their opener, won their opening game 1-0 to Marco Rose manager. Dortmund, obviously last season's finalists. As I said, 1992, they played. They also won their Bundesliga opener 2-0 against Frankfurt. So a solid enough start to the league campaign for the 2 of them. Atalanta, of course, if the transfer window had gone another direction, could have been lining up against Matt O'Reilly. Instead, obviously, he's got to brighten that terrible news of needing surgery after he's injuring his ankle after just 9 minutes.
That was a shocker.
Yeah, but Daniel, this is the key thing. I mean, we've been scrutinising the recruitment throughout the summer, and the key is this draw is made 24 hours or little more than 24 hours before the transfer window closes. We know today a deal is done for Arne Engels, the young Belgian. Looks as if he's going to come into Glasgow on Friday. That will all be completed. It's 11 million quid, eclipsing the £9 million that they spent for Odsonne Edouard. So that's a club record. So it's shown a bit of intent, and we think Austin Trusty is getting closer. A deal maybe not agreed has been suggested, but It is getting close. Looks as if that one could go through, but you just wonder. Certainly Brendan Rodgers will be. When he looks at the draw, the fans certainly will be. They're going to now be saying, right, what a chance we've got here. This is a favourable draw. Let's go and push the boat out.
Well, we've got
Jackson does here with this.
We've got plenty of comments coming in on the transfers as well, Gav. Charles Stafford on Facebook. As a Celtic fan, all I can say is what a time to be alive. We've got other ones here. Let's have a look. Jake O'Don talking about Arne Engels. Brilliant signing. The boy's a cracking player. Only thing is how long can we keep him from the Wolves down south? We'll be after him at the end of the season. Andreas Borgerson has written in saying, best signing in the last decade. Seen him a lot and he's dynamite. I'm actually surprised. Jake Jones with a typical Glasgow warning for Engels, though, saying, you better be great for that, though. That's all I'm saying.
Well, that is an interesting one because clearly Brendan Rodgers has put himself out. He's putting a lot in to this young boy, so he's going to he's going to have a lot of pressure. But listen, Brendan Rodgers sanctioned the £9 million for Odsonne Edouard, and he didn't do too badly, did he? So, and as a couple of the fans have said there, it's interesting because he does have such a good reputation. You look at people talking about him, in terms of what he's done in the Bundesliga this season. It is quite surprising that maybe some of the bigger teams haven't made a move for him. So it could be a real coup here for Celtic.
Aye, absolutely. But 11 million quid, the thing is as well, I was talking to one of my friends earlier, Gavin, it's a record for Celtic, but see £11 million.
Exactly.
It's not massive money by any stretch of the imagination.
It's a drop in the ocean for English Premier League teams, Spanish teams, any of this top European nations.
Aye, just going back to the draw for a moment. Anne Wood has written in saying happy with that draw, lots of exciting games. That's very true. And looking at Slovan, Bratislava, Gav, they came through 3 Champions League qualifiers.
Right.
They played Celje, Apoel Nicosia, and Midtjylland, who they beat 3-2 last night, 4-3 in aggregate. And Club Brugge as well. Again, one of the teams you'd probably back Celtic to beat at home, but they got to the semi-final of the Conference League last season, only losing to Fiorentina. So, on paper, that's favourable, but
that's the thing. We are saying that. We are saying, it is favourable, but as you say, to steal your cliche, there are no mugs, and Celtic have in this competition, lost games that you would expect them to win. So they're going to have to improve their performance at this level. But it's there for them. It is there for them. Last season we said the same. Last season, albeit it was tougher than this, or a lot of the teams were tougher than this. But Lazio, they weren't. It wasn't a vintage Lazio team. Celtic, should have done better at home. And listen, there's a bit of bad luck in that. It's a marginal offside call for Luis Palma's goal, and they go up the other end and score. Fine margins, as we always say at this level.
We should say, sorry, go on, Gav.
No, sorry, I was just going to say you do feel they're kind of steadily improving.
Aye, absolutely. And just to finish on the Celtic signing, Stephen Mulhern has written in saying, I'll be disappointed if Celtic let Mikey Johnson leave for £2.5 million to Sheffield United and offer double for Austin Trusty, who could only make the bench for the Blades on Tuesday night. That to me, Gav, seems a little bit glass half empty. From what we know of Austin Trusty, USA international, solid centre half who can play left back, I think he looks like a really good signing for Celtic.
Yeah, and then the flips, and the other argument, Daniel, was that, a lot of people saying 2.5, well, 3. I think it's maybe £3 million for Mikey Johnson is good value. Getting £3 million in for him, which takes incredibly, that's about £40 million, I think, in transfer fees that Celtic have brought in this summer. Is that right?
Must be, aye. Aye, you're right.
Yeah, and then throw in another 40 that they're going to bank from competing in the Champions League group stage. So it's some cash, and that is, as you say, you just wonder if it will tempt them now in that final day. If there are targets there, players that are sitting on a sheet and they're humming and hawing, whether that draw would just tempt them.
Aye. Andreas watching live on Facebook again. Money splashed in class talent. He says Celtic will be a different side now, much stronger. And Christopher here saying Mikey 3 million, Bosun Lobel 4 million. I don't think that's quite right. I think it was more 2 rising to 3. But even so, the fact Celtic can bring in money for that. I mean, Bosun Lobel, I think, made 1 competitive appearance for Celtic.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
I mean, it's amazing business.
Obviously, we can't. I mean, bringing in the money for Matt O'Reilly like they did, although well worth it. I mean, Brighton are getting, we've watched them, so they're getting a class act. Let's not underestimate on the park, which is where fans, what matters most to fans. I mean, losing Matt O'Reilly is a blow. Right. Engels is 20. He's not going to be the finished article. He's going to have a lot to learn. So, but you would think, Cal McGregor, Hatate, and Engels would be the midfield 3 at some point. Does Paulo Bernardo play in the short term? I mean, in terms of Sunday alone, the derby at Parkhead, would you be throwing Engels straight in?
Well, I was going to ask you the very same question. If you were Brendan Rodgers, would you be tempted?
No, I think you would start with Bernardo. I mean, Celtic, let's not forget, are heavy favourites to win the game as it is.
Yeah.
Bernardo knows this fixture, obviously scored in it, scored in the game at Parkhead last season, had the shot in the Scottish Cup final off the bench, plays a bit. So I think for Sunday, I think you would bring him off the bench.
Aye. Well, just to finish on Celtic then, Gav, right, as we've talked about it, I'll just run through it again. Arne Engels, looks like is on the brink of completing an £11 million deal. Yeah. We think Austin Trusty will join him before the deadline. So if you look at those two,
Mikey Johnson going. You're just talking incomings.
Aye, income. So if you look at those two coming in, we obviously know that the players Celtic have signed, Alex Valley earlier this week, Kasper Schmeichel. Is there any other areas that you think?
Well, it's clear that they were looking in the wide area. They were looking in the wide area because you're going to tell me the name of
Andreas Isaacson at Lazio.
So there was clearly interest there. So obviously looking in the wide area. Then that move was off. Lewis Palmer, who we thought Celtic were maybe going to be open to allowing to leave, is no longer leaving. So it could be that one has an impact on the other. That Palmer now stays, and they don't look for a wide somebody in the wide area, or they do, as I say, because of the draw. Maybe they go to the next on the list and push the boat out there. Luke McCowan at Dundee is one that doesn't seem to go away. They might bring him in.
Well, Thomas Gray on Facebook is saying, I'd take McCowan all day at Celtic. Is that one that you think could have legs, potentially?
I think so, yeah. No, I think it could. Obviously, Hibs had bids rejected, but I think Celtic are hovering about in the background there.
So, if you're Brendan Rodgers, are you happy with your transfer window?
No, I think he's still going to want a couple more.
Interesting. What he spoke earlier in the window about a young striker, which obviously Celtic haven't really been linked with as much. Alvin Sanchez is the other one, the Swiss under 21 international. He is a wide player. I do get the feeling, Gav, that after Trusty and Engels, particularly with it looking like those guys are done, done deals, I do think Celtic will probably get one more over the line.
Yeah. And the other thing that we can't remember, Daniel, about it's almost been forgotten about, is the Kyogo, Man City Kyogo, which sort of blew up last week, has gone quiet. It looks as if they might not make a move now for Kyogo. But had they come in and it was impossible to stop him from leaving, because there's every chance if Man City had been waving their cash in the direction of Parkhead, that Celtic would have taken it. That would have left Celtic having to go and get a replacement. So keeping him, that's another positive.
Aye.
I know fans always want new faces, but keeping on to players like Kyogo is also a big boost.
Absolutely. Andrew Bodwick, watching live on Facebook, says Maeda can deputise as a striker as well.
He's another.
This one as well. Arabi from Hammarby would be even better. And Andreas chimes in as well, saying Toure from Hammarby. Obviously, I'm not going to kid on, Gav, that we've actually seen Toure from Hammarby play, but Joseph Agnew saying as well, Luke McCowan and Lennon Miller. I wonder if that is maybe a name that in the final day of the transfer window. I can't see it, to be honest, whether it's Celtic or Rangers. I can't see Lennon Miller leaving this late. And just finally in the comments for the moment, Chris Fraser, watching from Houston, Texas, my Scottish football fix. Thank you very much, Chris. You are more than welcome. Whilst Celtic...
Toure from Hammarby, I was just going to say, is one that Celtic were linked with earlier in the window. It was reported in Sweden that they had sent scouts over to watch him.
Okay, interesting.
No, I was just looking back to try and find the story because I remember we had a story on it. Young Ivorian.
Interesting. Well, like I've said, I do think there will be one. I don't know if I'd call it a surprise, but I do think there'll be one after Trusty and Engels that Celtic get over the line. But watch this space. And whilst Gav, Celtic are getting transfer deals done across the city, it's more about transfer deals that aren't happening. If we look at Todd Cantwell and again at Anis Hadji, I feel like I've been talking about these guys every day for every night for the last couple of weeks. I just can't wait for their futures to be decided. GJ Anderson on Facebook saying, surely they can sack Cantwell for not sticking to the side of the contract and even sue him for a breach of contract. Look, I do get that's obviously a very strong opinion, but I just want them either to move on or bury the hatchet or something.
Yeah, well, look, Daniel earlier on today, John Eustace, the Blackburn Rovers manager, had said that nothing was imminent. It looked as if it wasn't going to happen after everything pointed to it yesterday that it was going to go through. That seemed to go a bit cold, but we've just put a story out not long ago saying it does look to be agreed and that he will go to Blackburn Rovers. So that's one that looks as if it is going to go through.
I think we did the story yesterday on Record Sport Online that I think that the fee being mentioned is 600 grand.
Yeah.
That, to me, Gav, seems...
I know, but this is what we've spoken about. But Daniel, this is what we have spoken about, and on the Hotline Live, and fans have made the point that when these players are out of favour, you're not in a great bargaining position, are you? Because clubs know that these guys don't have a future. So, I think that's what we're seeing now. Rangers shown their hand very early on in the transfer window. Philip Clement saying he's handed in a transfer request and, he's training with the B team. So clubs know, clubs can play on that, and Rangers are suffering from it. It's not clever. It's not really a clever negotiating tactic.
And
I think in general, and I know that Philip Clement and Rangers as a club are sort of looking at the bigger picture, but let's just take Sunday. Let's take Sunday on its own just now. I mean, when we list, and okay, there are still 24 hours and to go, but if you look at the Celtic breaking their club record and this Champions League draw today, it's all sort of all the positive noises, and then you've got Rangers. Obviously, they did a lot of work early in the window, and Philip Clement spoke about it. And although a lot of the players were sort of younger and for the future, we can't ignore the fact that they did make signings. There was also players that they bought who they were committed to buying, who were maybe in loan last season, but they don't feel like new signings, a lot of these guys. But you've still got to lay out some money for them. But just because it's tailed off for Rangers, we're approaching the transfer window, at the end of the transfer window, and the derby on Sunday, and the contrast. I mean, the contrast was there anyway because of the way last season ended. But I mean, if you look at it now, the mood in the two different the camps, and the fact the game's at Celtic Park. I don't know if you read Ali McCoy's quotes earlier, but he can feel the fear and the trepidation in the Rangers camp, and Rangers they could possibly change that, but depending on what business they do on Friday, it's not going to help how they approach Sunday's game.
Aye, absolutely.
I think they need to lift it. They need to do something here to lift it. Now, I know you can't just go and make signings just for one game. You can't. I know you can't. You can't do that, but they need to sign players anyway, not just for Sunday. But it would certainly help them.
I'm going to bring in, Gav, our Hotline Live favourite, Scott McDermott, who's at Tynecastle Park ahead of a massive game for Hearts tonight. Before I do that, I'll round off some comments that have come in on the transfers. This one saying, I would take Stuart Armstrong back at Celtic. He's a free agent. He's played for us before. He'll make a good score. I can't believe, I know he's 32, but I can't believe he's a free agent. This one here, Jam saying Duke to Celtic. And this one, I think, sums up Rangers pretty well, Gav. Kind of echoes what you said. David Fotheringham, who's a Rangers fan. Celtic just signing an £11 million player. We can't compete, unfortunately. They're selling Johnston for about $3 million, can't even get a game. We can't give guys away. What's going on? I think that sums up the mood quite nicely. Yeah.
Well, sorry, one more I should have said to you, Daniel, because I was just scouting around before we came on. And obviously Rangers were linked with Stanley and Soki yesterday, weren't they? Did you discuss him in the Hotline Live last night?
We did. We mentioned him.
He worked with Clermont at Club Bruges, didn't he? Then that went cold, and he's going to Lille. Or that was the last we heard. He was going to Lille. But earlier on today, there was other reports coming out of France. Bamo Meiti, sorry, Meitie, sorry if I've got to pronounce it.
Easy for you to say.
Easy for me to say. Centre back also, so it's clear that Clermont's trying to get a centre back in. He can also play right back, currently with Marseille, an Ivory Coast under 23 international. So reports in France that Rangers are very much interested in him. I think there's a few other clubs who have noted their interest. Marseille, Lyon and Brest.
Interesting.
And Brest are two other teams that have been linked with him. So there you go.
Watch this space. We're joined now, Gav, by the one and only, the Hotline Live favourite, Scott McDermott, who's live with us at Tynecastle. Scott, how's it going?
I'm good. I was just enjoying listening to our French football correspondent there. I'm quite happy just to listen away.
You listen, Gav's in the know. Rest assured.
Brilliant.
You're obviously there tonight, Scott. Before we move on to Hearts, we talked last night about Rangers. We're obviously just finishing on that just now.
Yeah.
If you were Philip Clermont and Rangers don't move on Cantwell and Hadji, surely you go back to them and bring them back into the fold.
I think it'd be tough with Cantwell. I must admit, I think you've got a better chance with Hadji. As we discussed last night, there seems to be a willingness from Hadji to come to some sort of agreement over this clause or the wage rise or whatever. And as we know, he's been playing in the B team, been training away. We touched on it last night. I think for the minute Yanis Hadji arrived at Rangers, his attitude's been pretty much exemplary. And if it wasn't for a bad injury, well, we probably wouldn't be talking about this just now, because he'd probably still be a mainstay in the Rangers team. So I still listen, from the outside. It seems like there might still be a chance of coming to some sort of agreement we had. It'll be interesting to see what Philip Clermont says about that this week's press conference. Cantwell's a different story, obviously. It just, the kind of vibe you're getting is that he's just bumped his bridges with the manager. I mean, there was always a wee bit of tension between them both, weren't they? Probably ever since he took him off early in that European game at Ibrox. I think it was 26 minutes he lasted on the right wing before he get hooked off. And ever since then, you've just always felt there's a wee bit between them. And clearly this summer, the manager's been looking to move him on. If that doesn't happen, I think there would need to be a lot of bridges built for Cantwell to come back into the fold. But as I said last night, for so many reasons, I still just can't believe that Rangers can't get a decent fee, or certainly a higher fee for him than what's been talked about.
Aye. Gav, I've been doing my research today, I like my stats, and I believe I'm right in saying that no Old Firm manager for either Celtic or Rangers has went their first 5 derby matches without registering a victory and made it to the 6th. And this Sunday is Clement's 5th game. He's still waiting on his first win. Is it potentially a watershed moment for Clement?
So is that it? You saying that if he loses on Sunday, he's sacked?
Well, he could be the first one to make it to the 6th game, but I just thought it was an interesting stat. Nobody's made it beyond not winning their open 5 derby games.
Well, it is an interesting stat, and there's no doubt that there's huge pressure on him. Alan McCoy said today that he couldn't remember a derby where a team was as big an underdog. I don't quite go along with that. I think there's been games where, if you think of when Graham Murty went to Celtic Park, for example, or even the first Old Firm, the first Old Firm game after Rangers had climbed back up the league. Oh, hang on, I need to get this light on again. We'll get that sorted. The first Old Firm game after Rangers had come back up, the League Cup that League Cup semi-final not long after Alan McCoy had left, actually. So I think there are games where Celtic have been where one of the teams have been bigger underdogs, but there's no doubt that Philip Clement goes into it under huge pressure. I don't think they'll get the win. I think bookies' odds of 4-1 on a Rangers win is probably about accurate. In fact, you could probably make them slightly bigger. However, going with your statistic, I don't think if he loses it that he would be. I think he would still survive until the next Old Firm game at Ibrox in January, unless a defeat on Sunday triggered a real spiral and they were, and it ended up the wheels really came off and it was double figures. I think the way the Chairman John Bennett spoke in the summer suggests that he is looking at the bigger picture. He understands that there has to be a bit more of a rebuild. They have to look a bit more long term. But as we know and we've touched on here, it's all right saying that. It doesn't always work like that. But I think as long as he's not miles and miles off, and as long as they can see signs that, that they're, as long as you can see signs, if they lost on Sunday and it was 5-0 and they were just absolutely annihilated, it might be a different story. But I think he could lose on Sunday and it won't see him sacked before the next one.
Aye, no. To clarify, I completely agree. Some of the comments that are coming in, Colin Harrison on Facebook just says "Gav, behave," and lots of laughing faces. Not entirely sure what he's referring to. Timothy McNary, who is a Rangers fan, that's commented before live on YouTube. Celtic are on top for now, yes. However, these things, as you know, turn quickly, which is a fair point. He's
right. I think over the years I've been to Celtic and Rangers games. I think
I'll let you know when we've got.
2 that spring to mind. One, Rangers won 4-0 Ibrox when Dick Advocat was manager and Kenny Dalglish was in temporary charge at Celtic. It was after the John Barnes season, of course, when it all went horribly wrong at the start and he was sacked. And Rangers won 4-0. I think it was the final Old Firm meeting of the season. And I remember that day thinking, God, Celtic are so far away here from Rangers. And you couldn't see it turning. Of course, Martin O'Neill comes in the next summer and it turns. The other one was the Murty game that I mentioned earlier. Celtic won 5-0 to win 7 in a row or whatever it was, and Rangers just seemed so far off. Steven Gerrard comes in, starts to close the gap. So he's right. The money is, I suppose, changes it a bit here. The money that Celtic have got, you think, how can Rangers ever close that gap? But it does turn. You don't know how it will turn, but in the history of Old Firm, it does turn eventually.
But one thing's for sure, Gav. I think every Old Firm manager needs a big derby result pretty early in their reign. The most recent one, and I know it was maybe only a couple, you'll correct, 2 or 3, when Giovanni Van Bronckhorst was in charge. And I remember getting into that, Rangers went into that Scottish Cup semi-final at Hampden, it felt like, even though Rangers were doing well in Europe, obviously, it felt as if Van Bronckhorst badly needed a result against Celtic. He'd obviously got his team had taken a sore one at Celtic Park earlier on in the season. It felt like he needed a big result in the Old Firm, and he got it that day at Hampden with the extra time win. And I think it's the same with Clermont now. I mean, listen, Rangers are massive underdogs on Sunday. I've said before on here, it's hard for me to fathom a way Rangers are going to take something for this game, if I'm honest. But so it's going to be difficult. But I think Clermont, not just for the club's sake, but for his sake as manager, as you say, Dan, you're going into his 5th Old Firm game. He's got to find a result for somewhere. And I think, given the circumstances surrounding Rangers and the noise in terms of the changes and players coming in and out and cutbacks and stuff like that, I think if Rangers can get away from Celtic Park with a point on Sunday, it'd be a huge result. Not just for the team and for the club and the supporters, but for Clermont as manager.
Well, we talk about Alan McCoist. And he's been saying this consistently. The message he's been sending out throughout the summer on radio or wherever he's been speaking is just one of real fear. And he keeps saying, it breaks my heart to say it. And that's what he said. He said, I hate myself for saying it, but that's effectively what he was saying, Scott. I would take a draw, but that's where Rangers are at just now. And that is the thing as well. I mean, and that's what's sort of been missing for Rangers when they've gone through these lengthy runs without beating Celtic. They had the run round about the time when we spoke about until Steven Gerrard got the win at Ibrox when Ryan Jack scored. I think Rangers maybe gone 14 games or 13 games, however many it was, without beating Celtic, and they're now on this long run again. When you think back to when Rangers were dominant against Celtic around about the 90s, during the 9-0 years under Walter Smith, even when Celtic were in the doldrums, they would still pull out an Old Firm victory here and there. Ibrox, it was a couple. When you think back to when Rangers, when Celtic went to Ibrox and Lou McCarry was in charge, remember they got a win and I think the following season they went there and got a win at Ibrox early on in the season. They would always pull out results. And that's what Rangers don't seem to have the ability to do just now. We talk about all form goes out the window, but it's not. It just goes to form now. There's no
exactly. Growing up, you used to always say you can never predict outcome in an Old Firm game. As you say, Gav, it didn't matter who was doing well at the time. You just knew coming up to the games that anything could happen. It doesn't feel like that now, obviously, because of Rangers' problems in the last kind of 10 years. That's kind of skewed it slightly, but certainly getting into Sunday, we're talking about form, but getting out the window. I mean, there's just nothing that points towards Rangers getting a positive result. And
that's the sad thing in terms of just the fixture as a whole. That's actually quite the sad thing, because even neutrals, tuning in, now, they kind of, us sitting here now, kind of, you expect it to go a certain way on Sunday, and it probably will go that way. We might be sitting here on Sunday night on the Hotline Live saying, Clermont pulled off a masterstroke, or Cyril Dessers, grabbed a last-minute equaliser, something unexpected. But I think sitting here now, we expect it will be, 3-1 Celtic or 2-0 or 4-1, or it'll be a comfortable win. And Rangers need to they need to do something to change that. And that's the thing. Despite all of Celtic's money, for 90 minutes in this fixture, even the underdog, even though Rangers are 4-1, should be able to do something, just to leave everything out there and just ask questions.
That's Clermont's biggest job for me going into Sunday. How does he convince these players that they're capable of going to Celtic Park and winning? How does he instill that belief in them, given recent results? I said on here a couple of weeks ago, I think for any Rangers manager, and it's the same flip side with Celtic manager going to Ibrox, I think for any Rangers manager at the start of a season, they must look at their squad, and the big question they have to ask themselves is, are this group of players capable of going to Celtic Park and winning? Forget Europe, forget cups, whatever. Is this group of players capable of going to Celtic, especially with no fans, and actually putting a statement out, making their mark.
Yeah.
I don't think for the last few seasons, I don't think that's been the case with Rangers squad, and that's why I'm saying I think Clement's biggest job this week will be convincing these players that they can somehow go there and get a result.
And that's why, and I think in your interview that you had recently with Borna Barisic, that's why Steven Gerrard, the appointment of Steven Gerrard at the time Rangers appointed him was key, because he was obviously a rookie manager. But one thing that Steven Gerrard had throughout his career was he did never say die attitude. He never knew when he was beaten. And that is what Rangers needed at that time. And he changed. And okay, they lost his first Old Firm derby at Celtic Park. It was a 1-0 defeat, but they were well, the scoreline problems of Rangers.
They come back to Europe that week as well.
He'd come back from Europe. He'd made big strides in those early weeks. He had to rebuild the squad, and they'd done well in Europe. As you see, a lot of travelling. They were never probably going to win that game or even escape with a draw. But by the time the next one came around at Ibrox, inflicted Brendan Rodgers' first defeat in the fixture, and that's what you need to do. It's about, you've got to, and you can imagine Gerrard. He just wants, and Clement has to be the same. As Scott said, he's got to get into the players' minds to see you can go there.
The key thing is, though, with that, Gav, sorry, Daniel, to keep going over it, but Gav will correct me if I'm wrong, but Gerrard, one of the first things he did was go and sign guys like McGregor, Davis, Arfield, proper big characters, big personalities in the dressing room. Even, I suppose, you could include Connor Goldson in that coming in. And eventually, I think they played a massive part in turning that mentality around, where did go into Old Firm games believing they'd win. And I don't think, looking at the current squad, I know there's a few guys that have been there, like Tavernier and people like that. I just look at this squad, and listen, that's no me blaming the manager, because I think that's what he's trying to build. I think by bringing guys like Proper and that, and he's hoping they'll be the next.
Well, I was going to say he's got to hope that Proper is the Goldson, and he's got the mentality of Goldson, or he can do that. Yeah, Hefty hasn't played in an Old Firm game, has he? No, so he's got to hope that he doesn't have, because let's not forget the baggage that comes with these. That's why there were so many calls to get rid of a lot of these players. Guys like Goldson and guys like guys like Lundstrom, who had suffered so many defeats in the kind of recent history of this fixture. That's why he had to sort of move them on, because psychologically they were maybe scarred from the last couple of years. So he has to hope that guys like Hefty who come in can change that. Connor Barron, of course, I think he'll be important, because he obviously knows not the fixture, but he knows Scottish football. So these guys will be key on Sunday.
Aye, we need to talk about Hearts. Time's getting away from us. Drew McMaster in the comments, though, Scott agrees with you. He says, why is Clement wanting to flood Rangers with foreigners? We need more Scottish players. I do think it's a reasonable point. But we talked about it last night, Scott. You're at Tynecastle tonight. Hearts against Viktoria Plzen for a place in the Europa League group stages. Are they going to do it?
Well, I said last night it'd be 2-1. Daniel going into extra time. So listen, why not say that they're going to go and do it? I mean, if they do, it'll be a special night here. I mean, it's a massive game. I think Fraser Wilson said last night, was it £10 million game, or was it even more than that?
12 million, aye.
£12 million game. I mean, it's huge. But the team news is just in. I don't know if you've seen it, but as we touched on last night, Lawrence Shankland doesn't make it with that knee injury, and I think that's a massive blow for Hearts. Just looked at the team briefly. It looks like Liam Boyce getting up front with Vargas. Two good players, but there's no doubt they're going to miss their captain, talisman, main goal scorer, and a big European tie against a good side where you need to go and win. There's no doubt that's a massive blow. Aye,
absolutely. To be honest, especially this season, it's hard to see where Hearts are going to score, Gav, if Shankland doesn't. It's a big ask tonight.
Well, that's the problem. He scored, I mean, he just such a huge percentage of their goals last season, and then left him on the bench for the Falkirk game, didn't he? And then look what happened. Now, Scott, you're convinced he is injured, yeah?
We've been over this before, have we know? Was it a Spartans game? In the Spartans game.
That's right. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I mean, you're the man there, so...
I think Rangers are planning a late swoop. Yeah, I can't see it.
Well, that's what the rumour mill's saying. I mean, have you seen him hobbling around? I mean, what have you been doing? That's why we sent you through there.
Listen, I cut my dinner short to come here and talk to you. So have you know? Go off and I do that.
Be honest. Be honest. You've been dotting around the fringe, the Edinburgh Fringe. No,
I've been enjoying myself.
It's not even on, is it? It's finished.
Is it finished?
I think it's.
We seen the best there last week, yeah.
So we did. That was good.
Well, look, we've mentioned Hearts, but Kilmarnock as well. They're 2-0 down, obviously, against Copenhagen. They're at home tonight. That is obviously a bigger task for them.
That's a bigger task. You can't. I know Derek McKinnon says, let's make it a nightmare for them. And listen, many teams have suffered nightmares at Rugby Park, including the Old Firm. So we know what it can be like, but you just think that second goal's a killer.
Aye.
They need to get the first goal, Daniel. I mean, Derek McInnes was right what he said yesterday. They need to make it as ugly and as awkward as possible, and that means being physical, being aggressive, long throws, piling bodies into the box. And listen, if they can get the first goal there and get the crowd up and maybe spook Copenhagen a wee bit, then who knows? But certainly it looks a tough task to come back for 2 goals down.
4 teams in the group stages of European football. That's the dream.
You're the eternal optimist. You've been saying that since the summer.
I know. I wanted 5, but St Mirren have obviously let us down. I just hope Stephen Robinson can sleep at night after letting us down. We will see, guys. We will see tonight. Massive night for Hearts and Killie, and of course tomorrow is transfer deadline day, and you can follow all of the news as it unfolds live on dailyrecord.co.uk and all of our social media channels. Gav, Scott, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Cheers, Daniel.
Thank you, Daniel. Thanks, Scott.
And
Cheers,
thanks
Gav.
for watching at home. We'll be back on Sunday following Celtic versus Rangers. Cheers.